Hello everyone and welcome back. Our third session for this evening is a conversation titled Legacies of Transformation, and it's a pleasure to welcome composer and artist and musician Raven Chacon, filmmaker and artist Subash Thebe Limbu, and Nici Cumpston. The session will be moderated by Megan Tamati, curator of modern and contemporary indigenous art, and Sharjah Biennial 16 co-curator. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage. Thank you.
So this session tonight, Legacies of Transformation, is about art, leadership and change making. So the word legacies, of course, means inheritances, heritages or birthrights, and the word transformation, change, reimagining or revolution if you step it out further. The three speakers tonight, Nici Cumpston, who's First Nations Australian, Raven Chacon, who is First Nations American, and Subash Thebe Limbu, who is First Nations Nepalese, have all elected to introduce themselves in a way that they feel the most comfortable, and will speak in that order: Nici, then Raven, then Subash. All three will do a short introduction to their practices, to their thinking, the ideas and concerns they work with. All are artists, scholars, leaders and change makers who lead by example through their work and practice and open up space for us all. I'm extremely grateful for them all making the time to travel to Sharjah, to be here, and for the contributions they will make tonight. The format for tonight is each will present briefly and then we'll have a short conversation at the conclusion of their presentations. Thank you very much. I just invite Nici, please start.
Thanks, Megan. I'd just like to begin by thanking the Sharjah Art Foundation for having me here and for supporting me to come and to be part of this conversation today. And thank you to Megan for inviting me. My family, I'm Barkindji from the far west of New South Wales, and I also have Afghan ancestry as well as English and Irish. So my great-grandfather came to Australia in the late 1800s, in 1869, as a 14-year-old boy, and he tended camels into Central Australia and used to deliver the mail between Broken Hill in Western New South Wales and into Wilcannia. So I'm just going to start by showing you. I just thought I'd start. I'm an artist at heart, and I went to art school in the 1980s when I was in my 20s and learnt the art of hand colouring black and white photographs. I love to be out on country, on ancestral country, and walk that country. And I recently did a project which I co-curated with my sister Zena Cumpston and 4 other Barkindji artists, Adrienne Semmons, Raymond Zada, David Doyle and Kent Morris. And the exhibition is called Ngaracha, which is a Barkindji word. So we're Barkindji people from the Barka. So the Barka is, in the Western sense, it's called the Darling River, and it's part of a major waterway that runs through over 1 million square kilometres in Australia, all the way from Queensland down to the Gulf in South Australia. And that waterway produces 1/3 of Australia's food, but it's a waterway that's in dire straits as a result of over-extraction and the use of water for many different industries, including growing cotton, which means that we end up with very little water in our Barkindji country. This particular body of work that you can see here is from the exhibition that we co-curated, and the exhibition Ngaracha Together, all of us in it together. And my series was called Mirumbilyi, Happy and Contented, because that's how I felt on this particular day. It was a walk through the Mutawinji Gorge, and that's a gorge that has been used for millennia for ceremony. There's a big ceremonial ground there that you can see when you're high up in the undercrofts of the mountain range there. You can look down and you can see this impression of where everyone gathers for ceremony, for trade. People would come to exchange all sorts of goods, and there are still ceremonies held there today. This is a very special place. There are 3 different types of rock art that date back tens of thousands of years. And this particular creek bed is where we walked on this particular day, and it's the day that I created this body of work. I use a black and white film, so I still use film cameras, and then develop the film, enlarge them, and hand colour. And the sedge that you see on the right, I'll come back to that in a minute. I just thought I'd point it out to you. In Adelaide, I've been living for more than 30 years on Kaurna country. They're the traditional owners of the Adelaide Plains. And I've been curating a festival of contemporary Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art called Tarnanthi. And Tarnanthi is a Kaurna word. It means the first light of day, or the first sight of a seed sprouting. And it was an opportunity that we were given to be able to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists to come together to make new work. And we wanted to think about, what is a word that has great meaning in the Kaurna language. So we worked alongside of the elders for about 3 months, and Tarnanthi was the name that ended up springing forth, which I think is a beautiful term for what we achieve. This is a video that just shows a number of different exhibitions.
Welcome to this place here at Tarnanthi, or as we know this place today, Adelaide. Adelaide is built on the land of the Kaurna people. We are family. We are Kaurna people.
Tarnanthi is about new light, or the first light. And today we come to the first light.
In the Kaurna language, Tarnanthi means to rise, come forth, spring up, or appear.
Tarnanthi seeks to embody this meaning in its artistic program by shedding new light on contemporary Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander art.
When people in community are making art, sitting together in a group, it's an opportunity to share knowledge and to share stories.
Kin munajin kaba generang nyubu bubara like man ke ngene ngoji munacila o ngoji ngalangacila ngap menabri jereng bernan ngene
en ngayo en doing ngai mengayo rar vi tolopo nunganganan kuya gobo kan.
I think visual arts allows you to articulate these complex issues a lot easier and in a way that gets straight to the core of what you're trying to communicate.
I'd already known like 15 years ago that I was going to do this, and it was just there waiting for the opportunity, and Tarnanthi has given me that opportunity to do it.
We are people who have always shared our culture, our people realise that culture should never divide but bring us together.
The art is in me, so it's part of me, it's part of my people. That's why it's important.
We have to make our culture strong by doing this art.
This is art as evidence. Evidence of a culture as old as human time on this land. Evidence of resilience, evidence of survival.
So this year marks the 10th anniversary of Tarnanthi, so we've got an exhibition called Too Deadly, 10 years of Tarnanthi. So we're looking forward to showcasing that if anybody's in South Australia in October through until the end of January next year. I just thought I'd also show this beautiful photograph of Auntie Yvonne Cormatry, who Megan has so beautifully curated into the exhibition out at the Culba Ice Factory. Auntie Yvonne, we worked with Auntie Yvonne to curate a survey exhibition. Oh, I forgot to bring, I've got a catalogue just over at the table if anybody wants to see it after the talk. It's of her retrospective, Riverland, Yvonne Cormatry. And this was an image from the exhibition in 2015, where we gathered more than 80 of her works and showcased them at the Art Gallery of South Australia. And it was so wonderful when she came in, because she's only ever seen, you know, she makes her work and it goes away. She might have seen 5 in a room at once, but never 80. And one of the first things she said to me was, I wish I had $1 for every stitch. Yeah, very talented, beautiful artist who is reviving, you know, the Ngaranjeri weaving technique. And Ngaranjeri people are from the Coorong, so the ocean down in the Southern Ocean, but also in the Riverland region of South Australia. And this particular style of weaving was revived in the early 1980s. It's now being continued with Auntie Ellen Trevorrow and a number of other weavers, but mainly, you know, objects that are for purpose, so utilitarian objects, the eel traps. But then she also made beautiful pondi, the fish, as well as the hot air balloon as her contemporary take on the weaving technique after being asked to contribute to a hot air balloon festival in one of the towns near where she lives. This was part of Tarnanthi in 2019. We had Tiwi artists from the Tiwi Islands, which are off the north coast of Darwin. There's Bathurst Island and Melville Island, or Wurrumiriangu and Pulangimpi. And the artists came down and performed with their tutini. So they're the pukamani poles used for ceremony, the funeral ceremony, and that's what you can see here. And the men were performing their yoi to celebrate this work. There's still the red ochre in the in the slate floor at the art gallery. It's just fantastic. The following Tarnanthi Festival, we commissioned the artists to make works on paper. All of the works you can see in front of you are all natural ochres, and they're depicting many different ceremonies, the yam ceremony. There's also a technique where they use the podja, which is a wooden comb that's carved almost like fingers, and that's rocked into a mixture of ochre that's mixed in with a synthetic polymer medium and then applied onto either canvas or onto the paper. So it's like a rocking motion, and you get that beautiful patterning that happens within the work. This was a quote from one of the artists last year, the year before, Robert Fielding, who's a Yunkanjara Western Aranda artist, and Robert wrote an actual speech for the opening, and he spoke at the opening. One of the guiding principles for Tarnanthi is artist voice first, and it's really about empowering people to be able to have this platform to shine. And we work with the artists to think about, you know, what do they need? What is it that you how can we help to support you to take your work to that next level? And I realised quite early on when in my career that a lot of artists, a lot of Aboriginal people are making work at home around the kitchen table, like many nations are, and not having the support to be able to get their work to a level to go into a state institution. And so that's something that we've worked really hard to support and enable people to have their work showcased, and it's been just incredible to see the way that has transformed lives. Other opportunities are through other festivals where now people through the Art Gallery of South Australia being behind Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists, we've partnered with many different other organisations across the city and state, and they have supported artists to come and have exhibitions with them. And that didn't come without us actually having to handhold and support so that the artists were respected and looked after properly. But this is Vincent Namatjira, who's a real hero in South Australia. He's a Yankunytjatjara artist, Western Arnada artist living in Yankunytjatjara country. And he did this incredible animation about bringing Indulkana community of the South Australian Ornangal, Pitjantjatjara, Yankunytjatjara lands into the city. And it was going out bush, and all the different, football teams, 2 different football teams in Indulkana, and how that played out. And the columns, the neoclassical columns of the art gallery ended up at the very last scene was the Queen across, and then her head blows off, and then it turns into the beautiful ghost gums of Indulkana community. So quite humorous and fun, but he actually loves royalty. So he's the grandson of Albert Namatjira, who met the Queen in the 1950s. This is where I'm going to work. So I've resigned from the Art Gallery of South Australia. I will still be on hand for the Tarnanthi Festival, and we'll go back to Adelaide for that in South Australia, but I'm moving to Virginia to the Kluge Ruhe Aboriginal Art Collection. I'm going to be the director there, and it's situated, it's part of the University of Virginia, and it is the only museum in the United States to hold a collection of over 3,500 works of Australian, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander artists. And it was one of those opportunities that presented itself, and I applied for the job, and I'm moving. Big move. They've just completed a national tour of the US with an incredible exhibition, Mardayan, 8 Decades of Australian Aboriginal Bark Painting. This is Jumbua Marawili, who is a cultural leader and lawman from Yolngu. He's a Yolngu man from northeastern Arnhem Land, and he was an artist in residence at the Kluge Ruhe and in 2016, and he talked about the collection being quite historical, and what was missing was the voices of today. So he curated, along with a number of other people in the institution, a major show that, as I said, toured for a number of years, which there were 80 new commissions, which were shown in Tarnanthi prior to going over Darwin, flying away to the US. And this is Jumbua's bark painting of Journey to America, and you can see the Statue of Liberty in the top part. So this is a bark painting, bark that comes from the stringy bark tree, which is a eucalyptus, and it's cut during the wet season, dried, and then natural ochres are used to paint all of this minji, the sacred design of Jumbua's clan, Modarpa clan. And these are some of the women artists in one of the exhibitions at the Hood Museum when it was shown there for the Mardayan exhibition. So I'm sorry, I think I've gone a bit over time, but thank you. Thanks, Megan.
I think this works. Does this work? Yeah, it works. Yat she Raven Chacon nishe, Toro Chitni nishle, Nakaidene Bashichin, Kiani Dashiche, Nakaidene Dashanale, Chinle, De Nasha, Do Bialdi Desenel, de Nasha, do Red Hook, New York, de Nasha, Shehwezan, Candace Hopkins. And thank you for being here tonight. I'm happy to be here. My name is Raven Chacon. My mother's clan is Bitterwater clan. My mother's father's clan is the Towering House clan. I grew up in Chinle, Arizona, in the Navajo Nation. And I currently live in Red Hook, New York, with my wife Candace Hopkins, curator. And I didn't really know how much time we had. I just threw a bunch of stuff in the folder, but I was thinking about the idea of carrying songs, and that I work a lot with scores, music scores, and those being the documents that carry songs. And so I brought this piece, a PDF of this work that had been making for over 10 years, called For Zikalasha. And Zikalasha was a composer, a woman from Dakota Territory, Dakota woman, who lived at the turn of the 20th century, was a violinist, also wrote an opera called the Sundance Opera. She was also engaged in a lot of other work, activism, education, founding the National Congress of the American Indian, fighting for the right for Native people to vote, whether that's a good or bad thing, and also seeking for Indigenous people of the United States to retain their religious freedoms. And so I started to make a dedication to her, but I quickly changed the project into making dedications for other artists that I know. Native American, First Nations, and Mestiza women who are doing this sound work, music work, but also other kinds of activist work, education work, community work as well. And so these are the different scores written for these friends and colleagues and heroes of mine. I'll just talk about a few of them. This one here on the right is a score for a Odawa composer named Barbara Crowell. And the way you play this piece is you're supposed to play the flute as long as you can with a single breath. You do it 4 times. The first time you do it, you blow the flute with that single breath while also singing. The second time, you do it while whistling. The third time you do it while humming. And the last time you do it while hissing. This one is a score for Candace. I'll come back to this one. This one is a score for my friend Cheryl Larondel, Cree Métis, and the way you perform this, all of these scores are to be performed by a soloist. The way you perform this is you make a melody out of those 3 dots. That those 3 dots should represent the shape, 3 or 4 dots. And it just asks that you make either 4 melodies or 4 songs in those shapes. And those songs or melodies should be in the form of advice. And this piece should be done in pitch black darkness. So Cheryl does a lot of work working with women in prisons to do workshops, songwriting workshops to both heal and pass the time. This one is for my friend Heidi Sanungatuk, violinist, Inupiaq from Alaska. She was told as a young woman, well, she wanted to do a few things. Her father is a celebrated wood carver of their tribe, Ron Sanungatuk. And even though he encouraged her to follow in his footsteps, others said, you can't work with wood. That's what men do. So she still ended up working with wood. She learned the violin. And somewhere in there, she said, I want to be a composer. I want to play in the Anchorage Symphony. And somebody else said, girls don't do that. You have to be really good to be in the symphony. The composing is not a good job to get into. I've been told that as well. So the way you play this piece is you compose a melody on the top line. You then get another sheet of paper and trace the dots of your melody. Then stick it behind this page and trace your dots onto the other staves, musical staves, which are warped. And so you have new melodies that are recontextualized by the system, by the staves. Your melody has not changed. However, it has shape-shifted into something else because the music staves have tried to warp your song. Each of these staves represents different things. The second one is a mountain and a valley. The third one is waves. The fourth one is a slope of a mountain. And the last one is a bird or a book. Let me see if I can go backwards now. I could talk about these all day. There's 12 of them, but I'll run out of time. But I want to talk about this one. I was wanting to write for an indigenous woman of Mexico, myself being half Chicano. I wanted to represent that part of North America. And I was having a hard time because, as we know, the people of Mexico and largely a part of Latin America, that identity has been erased. What gets celebrated is the mixture, the mestizaje, the nation that one comes from. So one is encouraged to speak more that they are Mexican rather than any of the 100 tribes that are in Mexico. And so I wrote this piece for my friend Carmina Escobar because we have this conversation about mestizaje. And the way you perform this score is the white shapes are the shape of the mouth, and the black shapes are the shape of the way you should scream. And you're asked to scream as quiet as possible to talk about this erasure. When you see a triangle, you're asked to do a reverse scream. There should be, go to the next image, voiceless mass image. And so those are graphic scores, but I was told at a young age to be a real composer, you're supposed to learn music notation and Western music notes. Of course, most of the world does not read that language, nor does need to be a musician. Can you go to the, yes, this one. So this is a piece I wrote a few years ago during pandemic called Voiceless Mass. It was a commission by a new music, classical music organization, Present Music in Wisconsin. They wanted me to write a piece for their annual Thanksgiving Day concert. And the Native American people only get invited to do things on Thanksgiving or Native American month. Native American month should be the month you take off, not the month you have to do a piece on Thanksgiving. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And I said, where is the concert? And they said, it's in the Catholic Church. And I said, okay, I'll do it. And so I thought, what can I say on Thanksgiving in the Catholic Church? And so I wrote a piece that would appeal to the people going to a concert on Thanksgiving in the Catholic Church with their one Native American composer. And it's a piece that I wrote called Voiceless Mass. It's in the style of a classical mass, but without text, without voices, without a liturgical text. And we could let's play a sample of that. So Voiceless Mass is written for the church organ. The church organ, like all keyboard instruments, was invented to replace at least 10 people, since we have 10 fingers. And I wanted to write it in the style of a mass, but there are no voices. This is to speak about the role of the church in colonization and the loss of our indigenous languages across the Americas. Not just the Americas, all over the world. Also, to this day, the church has suppressed the voices of victims of abuse by priests and others in the church. And so Voiceless Mass was written to speak about this. Not only speak to it, since it requires a church organ, it must be performed at the scene of the crime. This thing won the Pulitzer Prize in 2023, and now it gets played in church all the time, forcing the congregations, the churches, the ministers, the deacons, the priests, to at least acknowledge this history. And in my wildest dreams, I had no idea that instrumental music would be possible to bring forth such a conversation. Okay. Oh, here's more of the score. Okay. Let's go to the YouTube video. So I mostly work with music, but I brought another video, and yeah, this one you can play on silent. I'll talk about it. I brought this video because it was a work that I made while I was a member of Post Commodity. I wanted to bring it also because my brother in Post Commodity, Stephen Yazzie, who's also in this biennial, we worked together on this piece with the other artists of the collective. And this is a piece called Repellent Fence. Repellent Fence started with these small commercial bird repellent balloons about this big that have what looks like an eye on them. And so we loved the image of this balloon. To us it looked like a kind of indigenous iconography, but it also had the colors of all of our sacred colors of our tribes within this balloon. And so we had an experiment, we had a thought that if a 10-inch diameter balloon can scare away pigeons, that maybe a 10-foot diameter balloon would ward off Western civilization. And so we made 24 of these balloons to bisect the US-Mexico border and fly in a ceremony of 4 days to act in every other way counter to what the current US-Mexico border, how that functions. It was taller than the US-Mexico wall. It went in a different direction. It went from north to south instead of east to west. Not only to be contrary, but also to show the traditional migration routes, the paths that we have with the people in Mexico that have been there before the country even existed, before either country existed. But also importantly, because our balloons were up for only 4 days, we weren't pretending that our wall or fence was going to be up forever. The reason I wanted to talk about this piece, though, is because it represents a trajectory of both the collective and myself, in that we thought we were going to just put this up one day and, and the Border Patrol would freak out. But of course, there's other people who live in the borderlands. And what we realized was that this was not necessarily just an intervention into the border. This was a suture between both sides. This was a collaboration between the sister city of Douglas, Arizona, and Agua Prieta, Sonora. The people of both sides welcomed the project and found solutions for all of the obstacles of putting up this guerrilla intervention. It became a piece that was owned by both sides and has since been a learning experience in how to collaborate with others on a large scale. And I think there's a close-up here. I'll let my time run out. There, thank you.
Thank you, Raven. That was amazing. Asewaru Adang Badang Mase Anga Yaktungla Zilam Subash Thebe Limbu. Hello everyone, my name is Subash Thebe Limbu. I come from an indigenous nation from eastern Nepal, and I make films and work with paintings, podcast, music, and sound. Before going through my talk, as a visual person, visual artist, I would like to present to you a short clip of the work which is not in the current biennial, but the one that's in here, thanks to Megan and Sharjah Biennial, I really appreciate it. I don't want to show it here again, so I'm going to show you a small clip of the one that I did in 2021, and then I'll talk about my practice afterwards. So if we can play the video, that would be great. Thank you.
Amare anga yakang pokangang yu baban hapatura lam dhapa onu sumleng himyut lande himyut lase yem thak magile mapuke nam sangsak eke kizak mapuke tan chupai ke ki u papuke za mano long do wa mapuke hensing pan hapare kip ya yorik ite togang pose afat leang megisene hekisang kebe yemba afat leang niwa mebisene yorik kesia takam magisukla anga heke kesia relam takemetla ningsang puk manu tukhi wa yemha nante sera tantik panu bayan hinge afat le sanganga khene nuwa kene nam sang tang beha ma kha ke wasang kene we yamo ke wasang kene sade khese thak tharik long matuk ne himo bichi anga bek matoki lasasit pan keni sura kele sura yane o seba anga kerek kheda hare nadim metangangwa hikyang theba yuma ta thakpa onu chachingba chokmura pemura pangkheda hare kara khemba e nadim metabawa allokhine ke saptu sisiba kheda hare allokhine kusang kela susiba thoksang hare allokhine ke ba tusiba semi lung kheda hare hikyang allokhine ke jogusiba ittasu ningmasu hare hikyang sekha allokhine ke bitusiba kelang hakhare
emotions that rise trapped in the clouds that darken the skies and pour back down torrential rain.
So this is the clip from the work called Ningwasum, made in 2021. And since the last 4 or 5 years, I've been developing and working on this framework that I call Adivasi Futurisms. I mean, Adivasi is the term, I mean, we use in the Indian subcontinent, Nepal, India, Bangladesh, as Meena in the previous conversation, I mean, showed some Adivasi struggles in India that we resonate with from across the border. I mean, and Yakthung is the nation that I belong to, Yakthung or Limbu. I mean, Yakthung is what we call ourselves, Limbu is the exonym, and all of these futurisms that I explore is explored through the knowledge systems, the cosmology from our community, of course, I mean, you know, with kind of collaborating with the elders of the community, the knowledge holders, I mean, artists, musicians of my community. So, I mean, let me paraphrase myself. I mean, Adivasi Futurisms, as I call it, is directly inspired by Afrofuturisms and Indigenous Futurisms. It started with the inspiration from Octavia Butler, whose work that I used to kind of incorporate in my work, sound work especially. So I used to kind of record the passages from Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents in my sound works, and then, you know, made sound installations with it and so on and so forth. And then I have always been wanting to kind of use the struggles of my community back in my home country, Nepal, right? I mean, I was studying in London, and then, but I was never quite sure, like, how to approach those kind of issues, because I didn't wanted to explore those issues just for the sake of it. And, you know, having worked and experimented with the works, you know, referencing Octavia Butler, I mean, I kind of thought, like, I mean, maybe this is the way. I mean, you know, I found it really kind of inspirational, and that I can, I found a way to kind of explore the things that I wanted to explore for quite some time. And then why not kind of situate those means of exploration, those means of like investigations by situating our kind of lived experience from our part of the world. I mean, so in essence, I mean, Adivasi Futurism just adds the context of the geography that I belong to, the context of the geography and the people that have been living in those parts of the world for like more than, I mean, time immemorial, right? So it kind of relates to those issues where other indigenous, Aboriginal, First Nations people may not have been affected by. I mean, we have different sort of like issues the indigenous peoples, the Adivasi people face in our part of the world. I mean, mainly casteism. I mean, you know, those kind of issues. I mean, I wanted to kind of explore, and then I found this framework to kind of explore those issues, those grievances of my community through means of image making. I mean, I mostly painted, I mean, for most of my life, but I stopped painting after like, since, you know, 2015, and then started using other materials. So I found the visual, the image making, the sound, you know, I couldn't imagine making a work about indigenous futurism or the indigenous futures or Yakthung futures or Adivasi futures without sound and image, you know, of the people, of our people that I'm talking about. So I thought film was the best kind of medium to practice with. But still, I mean, I don't call myself a filmmaker like somebody else. I don't know when said that. I mean, I'm not a filmmaker kind of thing. I mean, yeah, I also don't call myself a filmmaker, but just an artist, I mean, who happens to use the camera as a medium. And then Yeah, so Adivasi Futurism, I mean, I kind of think it as a space where Adivasi writers, filmmakers, creative people can speculate or imagine futures where we have agency, where we have our self-determination, where we have our rights, where we have our languages and cultures and dances, I mean, you know, everything, but also with like the science and technology, I mean, you know, not just the drums and dances, but also stellar travel, I mean, you know, cosmic travels, kind of, those kind of technologies as well, I mean, you know. So, but it also kind of intersects in a point like where it intersects the struggles of the fellow marginalized people from our part of the world, or our country that we now call Nepal. I mean, the other marginalized and oppressed people, I mean, apart from indigenous people, we have Dalits, we have Madesis, we have, I mean, people who have been like even more oppressed than us by this nation state. And yeah, talking about nation state, it also talks about the Adivasi Futurism. It's also kind of challenges the idea of nation states, like how nation state has been, in most cases, very detrimental to the indigenous communities around the world. I mean, you wake up the next day and then you're in a country that you know, don't know. I mean, half of your community belongs to the next, I mean, across the border, and half of you, I mean, you are here. I mean, how the idea of nation states is kind of destroying the fabric of the indigenous people. I mean, talking about my own country, Nepal, I mean, how the state has been kind of oppressing our people. I mean, my people at the moment, we are having a huge protest at in my homeland. I mean, you know, shots have been fired. I mean, you know, people have been wounded, you know, those kind of things, because one person kind of wants to make a cable car in our sacred hill. I mean, you know, I mean, the state has put all of their energy and effort to sanction that development of cable car, and then, you know, our people have been like willing to give their life, and then, yeah, people have been wounded, people have, I mean, you know, there have been multiple injuries, I mean, so, yeah, it also talks about the challenges the idea of nation states, and it's also, I mean, it kind of explores indigeneity, I mean, sovereignty, time, memory, I mean, climate change as well. I mean, in case of, I mean, time and memory, I mean, the Adivasi Futurism, I mean, the work I'm trying to, the work that I make, I mean, it kind of explores, not the one in particular that's been shown in Alhambra at the moment, but the other one and my whole practice as in general, I mean, it kind of thinks time, no, I'm confusing myself, sorry. The one in Alhambra as well, yes. So it kind of imagines time as something not linear, not rigid, but something ductile, something that you can weave. So, you know, imagine what kind of fabric would you weave if you could weave time? What would the patterns would look like? I mean, you know, what kind of flowers, what kind of stars, I mean, you would weave. I mean, it kind of imagines as if you could weave time. And the weaving, it comes from the tradition of weaving in my community, where our grandmothers, mothers, and sisters, I mean, they've always been weaving, not in the modern times, unfortunately, but the weaving, like in many civilizations, not just our indigenous community, but in many civilizations, I mean, it has been a very important part of our community. And I took the idea of weaving further and made it into a science fiction kind of thing, like what if you could weave not only fabric, but time. I mean, you know, how would you want to weave it? I mean, those kind of things, I mean, full of imaginations, I mean. And it also kind of thinks time as like, also as a memory. Like time for everyone is different. The time for a person sitting next to me for Rayburn could be totally different from mine. I mean, or the next person. I mean, you know, it also it kind of thinks time because the way you experience that certain time. I mean, it could be pleasant, or it could be longer, or it could be shorter. I mean, so depending upon the experiences you had, or your grandmothers, your mothers had. I mean, the time for your community could be totally different from the community who has had a better time, you know, of that particular kind of era or particular kind of time in the making of a nation state or something. So even though we live in like a same society, I mean, the work kind of investigates or kind of explores the how time, even though you live in the same space, could be different from the people, I mean, sitting next to you. I mean, you know, those kind of thing. I mean, it talks about climate change. I mean, and what do I have next? Yeah, and I kind of, those Adivasi Futurisms, I mean, I take references from my community. I mean, you know, the folklores, the top left corner, it's an image of like a Venus and a futuristic spacecraft inspired by imagery, I mean, that is kind of we draw in our traditional drawings in houses. And it has a relation to a folklore that folklore about Venus, like how Venus was created. I mean, I'm not going to tell you the folk story now, but yeah, like the dances, and it also kind of take references from the traditions we do. Like, you know, we have a huge traditions, like most of the, I think, indigenous communities around the world. We have a very strong relationship with like raising a stone, a pillar, when you do something, like when you commemorate something, when you make a treaty with your neighbor or treaty with another community. I mean, you raise a stone so that it will remind you, like years after years, that you have to honor that kind of, honor that treaty, I mean, honor that agreement or something, right? So those kind of things. But also, it's not just about those, it's also about like thinking about the future, thinking about, I mean, interplanetary, I mean, travel or something, you know. I use like symbols, text, the weaving that you can see over there, I mean, you know, and the pattern of the stars on the shawl that you see in the middle, and there's a small object, dark blackish kind of object. It's a throw shuttle used in weaving. So in my work, I've, if you noticed, if you've seen the work in Alhambra, I mean, it's also in there that the time traveler kind of holds it in her hand. So it's kind of a gadget that kind of gives you the power to weave time. Like, so so I use those kind of symbols, then objects, and that throw shuttle, I also use it as the design of the spaceship that you see in the middle, bottom middle bit. So, yeah, and scripts, of course, yeah, lots of weaving and lots of little references to. So in Ningwasum, the film, the part of the film that I showed you, I mean, in that work, there's this scene where this kind of thread tiers, splits. So which means in our community, like, it means like some omen or something bad's going to happen. Those kind of tiny references, loads of them I use in my work. And this work, Ladam Bathaim, Future Continuous, the one in Alhambra, it kind of imagines as two figures, one from 18th century Warrior is an actual historical figure, and the another one on the right, a time traveler from distant future, a distant indigenous nation, very distant future. She goes back to 1774 in that particular place where our indigenous nation fought with the colonial army, and then later we had a treaty with them. And then our nation came under what we now call Nepal. So it kind of, as we kind of struggle with the state of Nepal for our rights and the land encroachment and asking to respect our traditional places and sacred places, this work asks us, so the viewers, like, it presents a scenario like, in the future you have this and this, in the future you have so-and-so technology, you have so-and-so agency, right? But how to get there? What are you willing to do to get there? What are you willing to sacrifice? In the film ends with the quote, like, are my ancestors prepared? So in that line, the ancestors, it means like the people in between those timelines, which is us. Us meaning particularly the people from my nation. But to lastly, to kind of to wrap up, this is not just about a particular Yakthung indigenous nation. I think it perhaps kind of speaks to all of the oppressed people around the world, who are fighting against big nation states, and the kind of interest of the exploitative capitalistic endeavors. So, and one of the people, so Nepal has more than 60 recognized indigenous nations, right? We have more than 120 languages. So, another indigenous friend from the audience asked me, like, okay, so you are talking about your Yakthung community in the future, so what about us? Are we not there? So to wrap up, I would like to iterate, like, I am doing this because I belong to that community, but it kind of resonates with all of the struggles and with all of the endeavors of the people oppressed around the world. People fighting for the land. That's why I kind of pledge solidarity with the people of Palestine. I pledge solidarity with the people of all around the world. Who are fighting for the motherland. And it's not just about particular indigenous nation, but all of the people around the world, who are fighting for their. Oh, there are more slides, right? These are. I think I should wrap up. Okay. Yeah, these are the images of. These are the images from my previous work. It includes like images from the protest. Most of them I took part in. This is the recent thing that is happening in my homeland, so which I'm flying this Monday, and then hopefully will join them. And so the reason I wanted to show you this is like, although I talk about futures, I mean, I talk about science fiction and so on and so forth, but ultimately, the main thing about my work is like the justice, you know, the justice for the oppressed people. I mean, the thing the people are actually going through right now is the main thing that I'm interested in. I mean, science fiction and technology, I mean, they are just mediums, but the goal is like, you know, to speak about the struggles of the people that are, I mean, who are struggling at the moment as we speak. Yeah, and yes, I mean,
Thank
and
you.
like my fictitious characters ask, I mean, are my ancestors prepared? I mean, it's just asking us, like, you know, yeah, I mean, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Subash.
And Ramadan Mubarak. Thank you.
I did want to just ask, I was going to ask questions of each of you, but I'll just, because we're nearly out of time, I will ask kind of a final question to everybody. All of you work with like these new formations, new framings, different types of space or possibilities. I was wanting to know, what cultural aspirations do you think you can achieve through the work in which you do? It might be your own practice, Nici, or the curatorial practice, or the directorship that you hold. So what do you think, what cultural aspirations do you think you can achieve through your work and practice?
I feel like at the moment what I'm focused on is providing new opportunities for artists from Australia to be able to be seen and heard and to provide a platform on more of an international level than I have been able to from Ghana country and Adelaide.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much of my own ways or culture ends up in the other pieces I make, but when thinking about models, I suppose a lot of what I'm involved in is dealing with the culture of, you know, the formalities of classical music, and you know, you have a composer, you know, you have a conductor, you have these kind of leadership priorities, and so using the score as a document for finding more equitable systems of making work together, of collaboration, of improvisation, not just sonic improvisation, but you know, social improvisation, improvisation when it comes to us organizing in other ways. And so I guess I'm interested in how the score can kind of replicate some of these older ways that we might have lost or that we're still understanding ourselves.
The other question for you, Raven, was I was interested in the idea of locality and what bearing that has on your work. So obviously there's works that you do in America which might address a particular history or ideas, but when you're working somewhere like Norway or the UK, does that have an influence on the type of work you make or your response? Is there a response to place? I know there is here in the work you've made for Sharjah, but I'm really interested in, as I said, the bearing that locality might have on how you manifest whatever you manifest.
Yeah, of course, finding similarities. You know, the similarities between my desert and this desert is what this piece, you know, looked upon. I think definitely site specificity. We find ourselves in these buildings, in these spaces. The piece about the church, you know, that becomes this kind of mobile site-specific work, in that it's not about a particular city or region. It's about this building that is located all over the world, and how can we bring this work into those, you know, to comment about those places inside of those places. And so yeah, I think there's, you know, maybe thinking about a music term like transposition, the transposability of an idea into different places could add to that context, or even, you know, make feedback into itself about what the work maybe didn't know it was about.
Thank you. So the same question to you, Subash, in terms of, not the first question, in terms of these new formations like Adivasi Futurism or framings or possibilities, what do they shift and do for you? And what cultural aspirations do you think you can achieve through that work? And I know you said you're also a painter and other things, and you've chosen film as a medium as opposed to being a filmmaker. So what cultural aspirations do you feel, you've probably answered it within the talk you've just given, but what are the cultural aspirations you feel your work achieves or can help manifest? Or
I mean, it is big aspirations. It would be a very big aspirations. I mean, you know, the work itself. I don't know how much of a how much successful the work can be in achieving those kind of aspirations. But what I explore, what I kind of try to explore is like inviting younger generations to think about how they want to kind of imagine futures. I mean, you know, how they want to kind of write their own stories. I mean, while also kind of relinking the cultures, relinking the stories and relinking the music that they have not been taught before, right? So those kind of things would be the aspirations. But yeah, I mean, it's a long work. I mean, it's a very, I mean, it takes many, I mean, years and times. I mean, you know, these kind of works, I mean, mainly creative, or, I mean, it's not like an activism, or, I mean, you know, we go out on the street and then accomplish a thing. I mean, we are on a journey which is harder. I mean, not necessarily harder, but very longer, and then sometimes very frustrating as well. And then you also kind of think to yourself, I'm like, why the heck you are doing this? I mean, you know, are you even kind of changing a single mind or something, you know? I mean, it comes with a lot of responsibilities, a lot of hard work and patience, I suppose. But I do see hope, and I do see lots of people kind of showing interest and making some work, relinking their identity, their culture, their knowledge, their creative practices, and manifesting in different ways, not just in art, but like, you know, young people are learning the traditional dances. I mean, they have like the weekly classes. I mean, in UK, I mean, you know, I mean, let alone in Nepal, but I mean, in UK, I mean, the diaspora in USA, I mean, you know, I mean, even in here in the Middle East, I mean, they have gatherings. I mean, you know, the migrant workers from my community, they have gatherings. They dance. They play their drums and stuff. I mean, things are happening, and I'm hopeful. Yeah. I don't know if I answer your question.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Nici, Raven, and Subash, for your time and for your thoughts today. We are done. Thank you.